Members of the committee. Councillor DeMuff.
Thank you very much for your presentation. You knew I'd have some questions for you, I'm sure. The first question, and I'm picking on you, but it's just sort of directed at everyone in the budget books that we got. When you go through each tab, how can we as councillors or the public tell what is changing in each department? So from what I see, it looks like generally I'm not going to show up and find a service reduction that isn't outlined in the budget. Is that correct? It seems like most of them, including other departments, are more status quo than anything else. So I couldn't find any surprises. I couldn't find any significant changes contained in each tab.
I'll let perhaps finance respond to it, but I think you probably answered your own question. There are no surprises. There are no significant changes. It's a budget with basically a status quo. Services continues to be provided. We've highlighted those opportunities are enhanced should you wish to explore those, but unless they want to add anything else to the budget, I think perhaps maybe I've answered the question and maybe I should move over to finance. I don't know.
The second one is a comment that I'm thrilled to see recycling included in there. That's one thing, though. I don't understand why we've got non-recommended budget reduction options. Two things in there. One is that some of them, the last budget committee said, don't bring these forward again. So of course I'm going to pick on outdoor pools and Toll Wharf, which has no cost to the taxpayer. Why are they still on the list?
Do you want to answer?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, you'll recall back in September 30th, we brought forward a report which talked about areas of service where we provide something enhanced compared to, as Dominic referred to, our comparator municipalities. So what we did is simply go through to look at those areas. And what we had suggested to council is out of those enhanced areas, you may wish to look at any areas that you believe should be changed. So it was enhanced areas. All we have done in this particular report, or the various reports, have come back and said, again, here are all the enhanced areas. There are a couple of enhanced areas where we're recommending changes. The rest of them, we believe, and I think Dominic said something which I believe applies to many of our services. These are the services that make Oakville. So those enhanced services are only being shown again as enhanced services, and we're not recommending any changes. So that's the background. Whereas before, we actually prepared many of those recommendations as potentials for cuts. So really, all we framed them as enhanced services so that you know where you're providing service levels above what other municipalities may be doing.
Okay. The Bronte Library, you're showing that as a coming out of 2012. But when the library board did their budget, we've already moved it out of 2012. So am I missing something on that?
Mr. Chairman, no, you're not. I think that we knew that the library board had moved it out and did not, I think, supported not building it in 2012. We have put it as a place marker in 2015 for the time being. We will go through the master plan review, and if it needs to come back, it can come back, or alternatively, an appropriate time slot will be identified, and certainly there'll be lots of consultation and coordination with the library board on that issue.
If you could go to the slide on page 19 with the sponsorship. I think I heard you say the Santa Claus Parade was included in there. Can you tell me where it's included?
Mr. Chairman, I know we have details of each of these, and certainly we can provide you that, but maybe I'll refer to our Director of Recreation and Culture. I believe, well, I'll let her respond to it.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, the Santa Claus, I think what Dominic was referring to, that in addition to what you have on slide 19, there are a number of different contributions in kind. For example, we have Tim Hortons that sponsors our skates and Santa Claus Parade. There are contributions for that. Those are actually not included. There's an additional $380 $80,000 worth of contributions in kind or, sponsorship of actual direct programs.
So the money that we raise directly for the Santa Claus Parade, that $25,000 to $40,000 a year, it's not included in your numbers here, is that
That's
correct?
correct, but I can provide you with the detail of all the others if you would like.
Well, that's fine. My other question is probably directed towards you, is I think there's a huge opportunity, as you know, to increase our sponsorship. Are you in need of additional resources in order to be able to do that? Or do you can report back on that, but it seems like, given the facilities that we have, the dollar amount of sponsorships is extremely low, and there seems to be a real opportunity there to increase it.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, we agree that there is an opportunity, and it's certainly something that we're looking at in the department to find the resources within, but be happy to report back at a later time as well. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just sort of add a little bit to that. I think that, as you can see, the sponsorship program is gaining momentum over the last year or so. And while I absolutely agree that opportunities for sponsorship exist, it's what type of sponsorship does council want? Do we want, now, we had some naming rights. Are we interested in commercial branding, as an example? If we are, that's great, but I think that that's part of the mix that we should look at. As well, the sponsorship issues are somewhat generated by economic, environmental conditions, and as I said, I think at times there are other community campaigns that go out there that influence our ability to collect funds.
Greenhouse. Why would it cost more for us to produce plants than it would to purchase them? It would seem that anyone in producing plants would have costs involved. It should be at least the same. So what's the $69,000? Why is it more expensive?
First of all, I think there's some historical perspective that needs to be put in place in terms of greenhouses. A number of municipalities over the years perhaps had them. They were also used as conservatories. And so that during the times where they're not producing flowers, they're still opened and available to the community. Whereas from purchase from a commercial greenhouse, we're just collecting and paying for the actual production. So there are other kinds of benefits that happen through the year that are not directly related to the cost of production. And I suspect that that's one of the reasons for the increase.
Are there any opportunities to increase revenue there? Because it's a beautiful, it's absolutely beautiful inside, and it is something that I think most Oakville residents don't even realize is there and that it's available to them. So I'm wondering if there's some way to increase the revenue that we're bringing in there as opposed to just closing it down.
Certainly another option would be to charge an admittance fee to it. In my, again, other comparators, particularly at the greenhouse in Etobicoke, for example, I don't believe there's a charge, but for example, at the RBG there is. Certainly we can look at that. I suspect that the revenues will be minimal. And many of our groups appreciate the fact that they can go in there for free.
Actually, I was thinking more in terms of having people come in like you do for weddings, and you charge for wedding photos if there are opportunities for photo shoots or movies. Yeah, I know, but to bring more people in. And the last question had to do with Oakville Galleries. I got the impression that $27,500 was already in place, or is it a potential budget?
That was an adjustment that we caught prior to the printing of the budget books, and so there's an opportunity there as well.
Mayor Burton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to voice my own personal reluctance to get involved with commercial branding of Oakville town facilities. I have always believed that Oakville is its own brand and a very powerful and important, valuable brand to us. And I don't want to see Oakville's facilities changed from Oakville to, Microsoft or something like that. I think our community values very much that we don't have an overly commercialized atmosphere within our town. And I will be continuing to only support sponsorship where it's subtle and internal to the operation of our facilities. And I believe there's widespread public support for that position as well. On this slide 19, I'd like to know if these numbers are net or of the costs of achieving them, or if they're gross.
Mr. Chairman, I believe they're net, but we'll confirm that with more additional information.
All right, because there's I've often seen in people's assumptions about raising money through sponsorship and advertising. I mean, I worked in television and I know a good deal about selling advertising. And admittedly, selling advertising in television is sort of, to make a joke on the Seinfeld show, which is a show about nothing. When you're selling advertising on television, you're actually selling nothing because you're disturbing some electrons and it's gone. There's like nothing you can hold. But the assumptions about how much money you can get are usually way higher than what reality turns out to be. And locally, my history of looking at these things tells me that we seldom recover our costs when we go down this commercializing road. So I'm reluctant. I want to be very cautious about that. It'd be terrible to lose the Oakville brand or dilute it and not actually have a significant amount of money net to show for it. So I just want to inject that thought. And then, Mr. Chair, I just need to know procedurally, when is the right time to refer these 6 things to the 10-year capital budget? Is that now or later or next week?
Well, I think the appropriate time to make that motion would be at the deliberation when we're dealing with the items formally. However, if you're looking for some additional information or options to be presented, today would be the right time to give staff a motion to say, and please bring back A, B, or C, which we don't yet have in front of us.
All right, well, with respect to the 50-meter pool plan, the curling expansion, the Pine Glen expansion, the soccer club inquiry about additional facilities, the gymnastic club inquiry, and the symphony inquiry, I support the notion that we would refer those to the 10-year capital plan at the appropriate time, and I'm content with the information that we've been provided. I believe the information we've been provided supports that, and so I just wanted to register that. On the matter of the greenhouse, I support the taking of the opportunity to more efficiently obtain our planting materials. So I think that's it's good of staff to have taken seriously Council's unanimous policy, which we've adopted last term and this term, that we want continuous improvement and efficiency seeking, and they've found us one. I think that's worth taking. I support the ice efficiency suggestion. And there are 2 additional things that I'd like to see. I would like to see a report on separating the Gerlach building from the park and selling it. And I suppose the report ought to include the maintenance overhang on that property so that we can get an idea of how much expense we're looking at if we're going to keep it and be a responsible owner, because the maintenance gap there is huge. And you know, not to be overlooked in the matter of the greenhouse is the $1.25 million that at some point, if we're going to stay in the greenhouse business, the taxpayers are looking at ponying up, in addition to the premium that we're already paying to get our planting materials that way instead of commercially. And then finally, or a second report that I'd like to see is I'd like to see a report about the competitiveness of our boat fees, including where capacity exists among our competing harbors, because it's a concern of mine that we're under market, and I believe there may be a revenue opportunity there. As I understand it, I've heard that the only available place outside of ours, the next available place that has capacity, I understand that they might be 50% more expensive than us. So I want to see, one of the things that I'm concerned about and that's driving this is we wait too long before we adjust our fees to keep up with inflation. And so when we do go to do it, it always looks like it's more than inflation, whereas if we were adjusting them annually, it would, you know, there'd be less of a sticker shock for people. I think that's all I had.
Okay, thank you for all of those items. So there are, just before we move on to the next individual, so there were two items there that I think would be relevant for us to give staff direction today so that they can come back to the next budget committee meeting. You know, whether, I don't think you'd have time for tomorrow, but perhaps for February 2nd or 7th. And so in the interim, while we continue to have our discussions, perhaps you could consider whether or not you'd be able to get back to February 2nd or to February 7th with the with a report on the Garlock site and with respect to the boating fees and their competitiveness. The support for the ice item and the greenhouse items, I think those are both relevant for our deliberation days. There are already, I think, options that are clearly before us that we can talk about. I do think that we probably need to make sure that the user groups at the greenhouse are made aware that the item's going to be before committee. The other 6 items, I think they're already moving to the 10-year forecast. I don't think we actually need to give you any information or any direction on that.
Through you,
Mr. Green?
Mr. Chair, actually, there is a report, which is item number 2 on today's agenda, with the staff, a formal staff recommendation, which would do exactly that.
Okay, thank you. So we'll deal with that later on. I don't think I missed anything else. And you'll give us the other information that was requested. Okay. I think that's everything. Councillor Johnston, did you have something you want to bring up right away? Okay, Councillor Demoff.
Actually, this question is, I think, for you in terms of the capital, the 6 items that are being referred, or perhaps through you, Mr. Chair. If there are other items that come forward during the budget process, would they be included later, or would they have to be put forward today?
My understanding is that we have really 2 concurrent processes. One is with respect to the Parks and Rec planning and what the needs are, and the second is the 10-year capital forecast. So if somebody comes forward as a delegation, for example, February 2nd or 7th, and says, we've got this great idea, we want you to consider it, certainly we can recommend it be sent either to the Parks and Rec planning, for example, or to the 10-year capital forecast for consideration. Does that satisfy you? Okay. Any others? Councillor Lapworth?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to revisit the tow wharf situation. How many boat slips do we have in town that contribute to their fee?
Mr. Chairman, I know that we reported that back in January of last year. I don't believe I have it handy, but I think as part of the report that 1,200, I'm being told, roughly 1,200.
Okay, thank you. Does that include the Oakville Powerboat Club and similar facilities or not?
It includes not only our facilities, but also all the private facilities. Okay. So there's a fee. And in addition to the boat slip, there was also, in January of last year, Council also directed us to increase parking fees on the site, and those also contribute to the
thank you,
to the tour.
Any other members of council? Members of committee? Okay, thank you very much, Dominic. I'm going to suggest that we take a 10-minute recess, just for everyone to have a break, since we've been going at it for a couple hours. And the next item is the infrastructure and transportation services, which again, I think will take a little bit of time. Given where we are, I'm very hopeful that we'll complete all 5 of the presentations today. I suspect that we'll need another hour and a bit to get through the remaining material. Okay, we are ready to continue with the infrastructure and transportation services. Welcome.
Thank you, and good morning, Mr. Chair, members of committee, other councillors, fellow staff members, and other members of the audience. I'm Dave Bloomer, the Commissioner of Infrastructure and Transportation Services, and I will be presenting to you today the 2012 budget for the Commission. The Commission makeup incorporates the programs of environmental policy, infrastructure maintenance, infrastructure planning and improvements, parking, and transit services. Environmental policy is led by our Director, Cindy Toth. Infrastructure maintenance is delivered through the Roads and Works Department, led by Enrico Scalera. Both parking and infrastructure planning and improvements are delivered through the Engineering and Construction Department, led by Director Dan Cozy, and transit services through our Director of Transit, Barry Cole. The makeup of the budget in 2012 is broken down as shown on these pie charts. The bottom pie does show the proportion of the overall budget for the Commission as about 34% of the total. The Commission itself is broken down into those various segments. I remind the committee that this is a representation of both the operating and capital spending. The operations budget for transit infrastructure maintenance tend to by far be the largest. However, when you add the capital program into the mix, the infrastructure planning and improvement budget is certainly getting up there closer to the top. From a net budget perspective, the proportions do not change a great deal. However, I would note that in this case, parking does disappear on the graph, as it does not have a tax-supported component to its budget. Looking back at 2011, we can highlight a few notable accomplishments. Under the Vision 2057 banner, we are acknowledging the listed items here. The Transportation Master Plan update is now underway. We are responsible for the background study related to both transportation, which is roads and transit, and that is also underway. We completed the major 5-year update to our environmental strategic plan, and we have now initiated a new sustainability plan. Other items to note are listed here. In particular, transit had a banner year with ridership growth, a new facility, and a successful contract negotiation with our transit union. Environmental policy kept the town at the forefront of many environmental issues affecting municipalities, such as the ones listed on the left-hand side of the column. The Health Protection Air Quality Bylaw. We are on the forefront of the comprehensive air zone planning that the MOE is using as a pilot. We've started into the climate change adaptation strategy, and we certainly spent quite a bit of time in a timely way on a new wildlife strategy. Between environmental policy and roads and works, we put a lot of effort into new streetlight standards. Under engineering construction, we are actively coordinating throughout the past year and coming forward with the hospital on the road work infrastructure related to their property. We had 18 kilometers of road resurfacing. We've added 31 kilometers of cycling network. On-street pay and display has been introduced to downtown Oakville. In roads and works, we've now got the groundwork in place for a new wireless radio system that will serve an AVL, or automatic vehicle locator system, and we've also got a new salt management plan. Particularly to infrastructure improvements, I haven't got an actual listing for you here, but just a general selection of some of the major upgrades to our infrastructure last year completed through engineering construction. We had major capital road upgrades along sections of 6 Line, Spears Road, the North Service Road East, Wycroft Road, and McPherson Road at South Service Road. We completed some major bridge and culvert rehabilitation works on Lynbrook Road at Lower Morrison Creek and in Weldwood Drive at Glen Oak Creek. We also did some emergency bridge repairs on Lakeshore Road at 16 Mile Creek and Rebecca Street at 16 Mile Creek. And new municipal storm sewers were added along Brookside Drive, Burton Road, Weldwood Drive, Pine Grove Road, Jeanette Drive, and Oriole Drive in the Glen Oak area. The work we do is delivered to achieve some key outcomes, all of which should be adding value and livability for our community. Some of the outcomes we are looking for are summarized in these next few slides. For environmental policy, these are some of the key things that we are striving for. Our environmental initiatives should be progressing the town towards sustainability, and we take great effort to report to Council every year with our State of the Environment report to show that. The community awareness and partnerships we enjoy is ever growing, ever improving. We hosted 26 events and in excess of 1,000 participants during 2011. And I think even more to the point is we are developing and sustaining municipal expertise and leadership within the organization. And we did address some 16 significant issues during the year by our environmental policy staff. In parking, we operate with full cost recovery. Parking revenue growth has been up over the last 5 years. We try to provide and deliver effective responsive enforcement levels. Compliance of the bylaw is probably foremost in our desire, but it does come with the requirement for enforcement. And the customer service, which can always be tricky in an enforcement end of the world, but we have enjoyed some improvements to how people can pay for parking permits and fines, how they can be issued permits, and how we prosecute the infractions. So in 2011, we have now got online payments exceeding all the other methods. We've issued over 9,500 permits, and our first attendance facility is dealing with more cases than we take now to court. I've simply given that I guess a cautionary yellow bullet in this case because we're not complacent. We do believe there's improvements that we can achieve to even ever better improve the payment schemes that are available to our clients, as well as how we process and offer permits to the public. And we will continue to try to minimize the number of cases that have to go through the court system. The infrastructure maintenance program has a broad range of activities that are some of the most obvious services noticed by our citizens as they're being delivered throughout the town. Here's a selection of some of the outcomes that we strive for each and every year. Certainly there's an expectation we will comply and or exceed our minimum maintenance standards, which we do. We need to have timely and effective response to our winter storm events. Currently we do, in most cases, meet 100% of those service levels. Minimal road drainage and nuisance flooding issues is something that we take pride in. Our public road corridors should be in a state of good repair with improved aesthetics, and through the citizen survey in 2011, we've noticed an ever-increasing satisfaction by the public in the condition and appearance of our roadways. Safe and reliable, effective traffic control systems are important, as is trying to get to an area where our fleet operation is reliable, effective, and has less environmental impact. The areas on this slide that I've noted with a little bit of yellow caution or something that, again, we do not want to ever be complacent with is we know there are pieces of our infrastructure that are still needing attention. We can never sort of sit back and expect that it's going to remain in good condition forever. And the thing with traffic control systems is we're reporting back this year with to council on issues with regard to optimization of our traffic signal network and the desire to either confirm and or change the signal timing and phasing to ensure that we are delivering our traffic control in an effective manner. Under the programming of infrastructure planning improvements delivered through the Engineering Construction Department, there is a huge role that we have to play in planning and managing the town's investment in public works infrastructure. The assets have great value, both financially and to the livability of our community. So in this area, we have to strive for an effective management and planning of that huge investment we need to do in our infrastructure assets. The timing and scheduling of those projects is critical And it is complicated because there are other agencies throughout the municipality who deliver work on our roadways, so we have to ensure that we're not doing work prematurely if we know the region or a utility company is out there ready to dig up the road after we fixed it. We need to ensure our projects meet professional engineering standards and best management practices. We really look to have effective public engagement and communication for our project work. Traffic management is a huge challenge for us. I mean, generally speaking, our road system operates quite effectively, but members of council know just as well as we do the number of complaints and concerns that are expressed with regard to speeding traffic, volumes of traffic, and generally aggressive traffic in general. We are striving to increase the system of sustainable transportation options, primarily walking, pedestrian, and cycling networks. We are really making headway in improving the effectiveness and understanding of our stormwater management pond performance. These are new pieces of infrastructure that we're assuming as new subdivisions come online, and we've started to monitor at least 30 locations, and we're learning a great deal about their performance. We also have the road corridor permit activity within this program, where we strive to deliver a level of service that's responsive, as well as maintain a cost recovery ratio that is at 1 or greater. And even more so in this area, we try where we can to assist people, user groups who are looking at doing special events. The people in the road corridor office can truly be a good resource to people who are looking at hosting or undertaking special event activities. In transit services, we have growth in ridership and revenue this year. Our revenue cost ratio is one of those factors that we always have to manage and look to as a performance indicator. Increasing our customer satisfaction and citizen support through the citizen survey, we've identified in 2011 some growth in that area where 68% of our users and 53% of the public are expressing some level of satisfaction with Oakville Transit. And these are good advancing numbers from previous surveys. The service reliability and scheduling is something we always keep in track. We certainly strive to meet our obligations under the accessibility regulations. The desire for enhancing our customer convenience. We now have several different fare media options. We're ever increasing our bus stop amenities for the comfort and safety of our customers. The fleet life cycle performance is improving as we get a fleet that is more modern and environmentally friendly than ever before. The areas that I've shaded again in the yellow, which is almost like a brown in this case, are areas where we do have to spend some time and attention because, you know, there's no question that the cost of operating transit comes with the offsetting revenue, and there's always the challenge of trying to satisfy people that the fares that we charge are not unduly high, but at the same time we can't burden the taxpayer as well. So that will continue to be an ongoing challenge for transit services. And of course, we'll be speaking a little later about some sophistication to our transit information and communication systems where we can hopefully achieve some improvements to ensure that our scheduling and reliability is advancing forward. I think there's nothing more unhappy to a customer when we have a bus pull away from the GO station when a bus or a train is just arriving, and we have systems that can be adopted that will ensure that that sort of thing is minimized to the greatest extent possible. Sorry. Moving on to the key financial drivers. Certainly similar to all the other commissions, we have many consistent financial drivers in our budget. However, we are a commission that is heavily reliant on services and materials that continue to increase in price, especially items like fuel, electricity, and several products related to road maintenance and construction. We have other key cost impacts in 2012 that will relate to the administration of the new health protection bylaw, the continuing purchase of green energy, the introduction of our wireless radio system, the growth in our road resurfacing program, and of course the growth overall of the community and the additional inventory of responsibilities that brings with it. We are now in the first year, I believe, of having to fund our bus replacement entirely at our own resources. There used to be a provincial subsidy assigned to bus replacement. That does no longer exist. And of course, we have to annualize the cost of the new transit facility as it will be operating for its full year starting now. And as Nancy Sully had mentioned earlier, we are now in year 3 of the cost allocation model from the Ontario Energy Board that has a great effect on the cost of the power we use for our street lighting network. Moving into 2012 and the following 2 years, we can outline some of the key initiatives that are to be addressed in our budgets. The Vision 2057 Community Building Framework contains some of the most important deliverables for achieving the town's vision. In our commission, we will be leading the role related to the Transportation Master Plan and the background study and the development charges related to transportation. That's both roads and transit. We have a lot of work to do in the Midtown EA study. This is the study that will hopefully get to a point of defining the transportation network and the storm drainage network that will be required to service that growth center of Oakville. The downtown area transportation review is part of the action plan that came out of the Downtown Oakville Strategic Review, so that would be initiated in 2012, and that incorporates a major update to our parking study for downtown Oakville. We will be putting a lot of effort into a new Oakville sustainability plan. We have a lot of work to ensure that our energy management plan continues to move forward, and we have some other work assigned to the climate change adaptation strategy. There are many other items that form part of the Commission's work plan to advance the strategic priorities of Council. Several of these we list here for reference. In particular, I'll take note of the Health Protection Air Quality Bylaw. There's another large next step that's currently planned for 2012 with the major emitters requiring to be going through an approval process effective in September. This will be the first full year of working with the MOE on the pilot for a comprehensive air zone management program that is being introduced to the Oakville-Clarkson Airshed. Phase 2 of Service Oakville will touch all of the departments and all the commissions, but in 2012 in particular, I know Roads and Works has a huge role to play in the first wave of that Service Oakville initiative. We also have a transit service and funding discussion we need to start introducing with the region and other agencies to talk about how the long-term funding and service delivery will be accomplished in the area of public transit. It continues to be, of course, a real challenge because of the funding required to deliver the level of service that's necessary to meet our objectives. Other things of note, the North Oakville Satellite Depot would be under construction in 2012, preparing for opening in late 2013, 2014, and as Dominic had said earlier, that will house the interim fire station number 9. Our new radio and AVL initiatives are tied very closely to the transit information system that I alluded to earlier. These are things where we can benefit from having our own wireless radio system that can allow us to introduce more sophisticated transit information and communication systems for our customers, as well as for our own internal use of managing the fleet operation or the transit operation. The Sheridan College UPass continues to be one of our main objectives. If we are able to get Sheridan College to sign up to a UPass, it will be a significant revenue improvement for our transit system. One of the infrastructure areas that we still have a lack of information on is our storm sewer network, and through the master plan that's currently being worked on, we hope to deliver back to Council a plan that would indicate where the investments in our storm sewer network have to be made and prioritized. And a new municipal administrative penalties program that kind of alludes back to our discussion on parking. There is opportunities outside of the Provincial Offences Act for us to start prosecuting parking infractions a little differently under the Municipal Act, which would reduce the load on the court system. Many of these initiatives are supported with capital funding, but this slide provides a listing of many other projects that make up a key component of our capital program. The full capital budget for the Commission can be found under tabs 9, 10, 11, and 12 in the capital budget binder. I've spoken already to some degree on the first 3 items. Some of the others I would like to note would include the bus replacement and refurbishing item. I noted earlier that we are funding the bus replacement program entirely on our own now, but I would also note that there is no new expansion buses being proposed in the first couple of years of our budget. So the new buses we bring on board in the next couple of years will simply be replacement buses. We have the continuation of the accelerated road hot mix paving program. We will be adding a new initiative to have a public renaming contest for the hot mix paving program. First prize, you get a year's supply of asphalt cement. So we acknowledge the comment that was made earlier, and we do believe there's probably words that can be chosen that will differentiate it from or make it easier for the public to understand. The 14 Mile Creek Channel Rehab, it's one of those projects that has been fraught with some challenges over the last couple of years. There's a very small window of opportunity to actually do work within a channel, and I think we've got to a point now where this summer of 2012 we will be doing the channel rehab in 14 Mile Creek. In addition, there's a significant amount of engineering work and designation of land acquisition that we have to do in order to plan for the Kerr Street grade separation at the CN tracks. That's our next railway underpass that we're hoping to deliver. It won't be delivered this year, but there's a great deal of work needed in order to get ready for that. Some of the main road projects listed there would be the 4th line, widening from Spears Road up to Wycroft Road. We've accomplished improvements north of Wycroft over the QEW, and there's a missing piece still to be upgraded now south of Wycroft. The 3rd line work is related to the coordination of the road work necessary to support the new hospital site north of Dundas Street. We are looking to extend the North Service Road through to Ford Drive by building a small bridge over Joshua's Creek. And McCraney Street in the area of the high school east of 6th line is also on schedule for a major upgrade. I'll also note the lower base line, that's the Henderson Park Bridge, which is way overdue to be replaced, and we're hoping in this capital budget that we'll be able to accomplish that as part of the program. As the other commissioners have been speaking to, for the Budget Committee meeting of September 30th, staff presented a report that spoke to all of the town's programs and how they compared to the service levels in other municipalities. Many of these I'm noting here will be discussed in more detail later in my presentation. In that report to Budget Committee back in September, we were able to highlight various services that Oakville delivers to what could be considered enhanced levels. Many of these show the town's leadership in the challenges affecting municipalities. And I'll just provide these slides to sort of remind members of the Budget Committee of the areas of service there where the town may be considered to be a leader or at the forefront. We have a health protection air quality bylaw, we have a greenhouse gas emission reduction target, and our environmental stewardship efforts through outreach and education tend to be second to none. In infrastructure planning and improvements, I noted earlier our efforts to better understand and report on our monitoring of stormwater systems, primarily the stormwater management ponds. In infrastructure maintenance, when you look at our road and sidewalk sweeping program, our litter and debris removal service, graffiti removal, they all tend to be as good or better than most municipalities. We have a bulk leaf collection program that does tend to be a little bit more ambitious than others. In the winter control area, we have a commercial district snow removal and a seniors driveway windrow removal program. Now, admittedly, those two are becoming much more common throughout the municipal sector, so there's nothing necessarily to advise as being really unusual. Our pavement marking inventory with the traffic calming initiatives and the bike lane initiatives we're taking on obviously adds cost to our pavement marking program. And our school crossing guard services are ever growing, and we would like to talk maybe about strategically looking at some of the changes in the school crossing guard area. For transit, our only real enhanced service to note would be the weekly senior specials that we offer. Notwithstanding the increased investment in transit over the last few years, we have not yet quite reached a point where we are offering the same frequency of service or the start-finish times that most of our comparator group would be offering. Moving into the Budget Committee direction that came out of the September 30th meeting, the first item we were asked to do was to look at optimizing the fit between transit resources and our demand. So we have started to, we've carried out a performance review of our existing routes. We identified those routes that had the lowest number of rides per hour. These routes were then assessed for the ridership trends, whether the trend was going up, down, or static. Those routes that were trending upwards, we didn't want to consider any changes for now. However, there was some routes that were trending downwards or remaining static, and those became the candidates for adjustments. With these assessments, we established the candidate routes for potential adjustments as the grouping shown on the screen here. Number 110, West Industrial North, number 11, Lynbrook, number 21, Clearview, number 25, Aspen Forest, number 33, Palermo, number 31, Bridge Great Lakes, number 32, Burloak North, number 22, Upper Glen Abbey. For these routes, we have developed a series of recommended adjustments. And at this point, I'm going to call up Barry Cole, Director of Transit, to walk you through these planned route changes.
Good morning. As Commissioner Bloomer has indicated, we've conducted a rather thorough review of all of our routes. And you'll recall also that back in October, I presented to Council on transit with respect to our accomplishments in 2011. And one of the slides in that presentation, I showed what was a significant upward trending 12-month moving ridership graph. And what we looked for in the review essentially came down to those routes that did not seem to be contributing to that upward trend. Since that presentation, the very next month, November, I can tell you that the ridership trend did continue. We set an all-time record for a single-month ridership of 275,000, and we finished off the year with a 9.18% increase in ridership when we hit 2,874,000 rides, which is an increase approximately equivalent to twice the national average. So what we looked for in our assessment was those routes that, as I said, weren't contributing to that, and the most obvious one was Route 110, West Industrial North. We currently have two routes operating in the industrial areas west of Trafalgar Road. The 110 is the North Service Road, and 10 is the South Service Road. These routes were split back in 2007 when the Fourth Line Bridge underwent construction. The original, or the first year ridership on the new Route 110 was encouraging, and so we moved forward and retained the split routes. Since that time, ridership has trended downward, and you'll see on this particular map, we're showing what is the proposed new routing, but you'll see the area between Fourth Line and Third Line on the North Service Road. That, in fact, is the only portion of North Service Road west of Trafalgar that is not serviced by another bus route. So what we've done is, what we're proposing is combining Route 10 with 110, and in effect returning it to its original routing, its pre-2007 routing. Interestingly enough, before the routes were split, the last full year on Route 10, when it was servicing both the north and the south, we realized about 45,000 rides that year. In 2011, the combined total ridership on the two routes, 10 and 110, was about 40,000. So in fact, by returning back to the original routing, what you're seeing in front of you here, there's a good chance that we can stem the downward trend and in fact possibly increase ridership. Certainly rides per hour will increase as a result. The second route that we're looking at is Route 25 in southeast Oakville, Aspen Forest. Again, this is a route with relatively low ridership as measured in rides per hour. However, there is a slight upward trend. Ridership has been improving over the last 3 years. In 2009, it was about 10,300. In 2011, just slightly under 11,000. So the route is doing fairly well. It's a rush hour service only route in and out of the Clarkson station. But what we found during our assessment was that Of the 5 evening trips on this route, 2 recorded ridership levels of 1 person and 2 people. So the last 2 routes, or the last 2 trips on this particular schedule were accommodating 3 people. Those people would still have reasonable access to transit, we believe, either through Route 2 or Route 11, albeit to different GO stations. So Transit's recommendation in this particular case is that we simply remove the last 2 trips from that schedule. The resulting annual savings on that would be about $17,000. The next routes we looked at were Route 31 and Route 32. Now, Route 31 is a rush hour only service into Great Lakes, operates out of the Bronte GO station. Ridership is fairly steady on this route, and by steady I'm just indicating that it hasn't really gone up or down over the last 3 years. It's static, but is relatively low measured in rides per hour. We looked at the alternatives for delivering service to that area. The option that we elected to go with after investigating both 32 and 14 as possible routes that could be combined with, we elected to go with Route 32. Route 32 has been increasing in ridership over the last 3 years. It's gone from carrying 24,000 rides in 2009 to 32,000 rides this year. So we have a slight upward trend. It's a 7-day-a-week service operating at a 30-minute frequency. You'll see Route 31 operating out of the GO station, down Third Line, across Bridge, Rebecca, and down into Great Lakes. Route 32, you will see on that map, operates out of Hopedale, straight across Rebecca, and up Burloak into the RioCan Centre. We're proposing combining these 2 routes into a single route that you see there. The benefit of this is that we also move Route 32, the new Route 32, into the Bronte GO station. It currently does not have a GO station anchor at either end. It will continue to operate down Third Line into Hopedale and make the existing connections, albeit on an hourly basis as opposed to half hour, across Rebecca, and then instead of going straight over to Burloak and north, it'll swing south on Great Lakes, across Lakeshore and north on Burloak. What this will do is it'll give all-day service, 7-day-a-week service to the residents in the Great Lakes Boulevard area, and this is an area where I and Councillor Robinson met with residents last August, and they were indicating that they were looking for all-day service 7 days a week. So this provides the service that they're looking for in the area. It achieves an efficiency reduction of approximately $62,000 by combining the 2 routes, and we believe the combined ridership on the 2 routes will likely exceed the ridership on the new route will likely exceed the combined ridership of the 2 routes now. Route 22 was a new route introduced in 2009 with the new service design. We had a Route 22 prior to that, but it was an entirely different routing. So the new Route 22 has, again, it's a low ridership route. Ridership levels have declined by about 5,000 since it was originally introduced, from 49 down to about 44,000. We assigned moving ride counts to this route to get a handle on where the ridership was showing up, and what we found was that virtually all of the ridership on Route 22 was occurring in the rush hour periods. In fact, there was virtually no ridership on this particular route in the evenings. Conversely, we have a situation on Route 19, which you see on this map. Route 19 is one of our busiest routes, probably top 4. It'll carry almost 300,000 people this year, but it has chronic reliability issues. This speaks to the customer satisfaction rate and the complaints of reliability that Commissioner Bloomer spoke to earlier. And in order to resolve that, we have to assign more running time to the route. In order to maintain the same frequency or headways, that means we have to add a bus. So what we are looking at is, by way of efficiencies, is taking the off-peak service from Route 22 and assigning it to Route 19, taking it from a low ridership, unproductive route and putting it onto one of our primary routes to address reliability issues and customer satisfaction issues. This is a no-cost item that should improve service reliability and result in increased customer satisfaction and ridership. Route 11 and 21 in southeast Oakville. Again, we're looking at these because on a rides per hour basis, they are low ridership. They're relatively static on a trend analysis, but the important consideration with this route, Route 11, which is Lynbrook, and Route 21, these are interline routes, which services Clearview, is that they are essentially the only service in those areas, and they're already operating at hourly, so there's nothing we can really do other than removing the service, and we would not recommend removing the service from these two areas. The resulting distance from access for residents would be as much as 900 meters, 970 meters on Route 21 to access Route 2 along Kingsway. So although again, like I said, the ridership is relatively low on a rides per hour basis, we're not recommending any change to these routes at this time. Lastly, we have Route 33. Route 33 was a new route introduced just this year, and yes, the map is sideways. So that is a north-south operating route from Dundas down to the Bronte GO station. It's a rush hour only service, and although it measures relatively low in rides per hour, it is a new route with 3 months of operation, and we have seen an increase in ridership in each of those months, in fact, from about 700 rides in the initial month to almost 1,000 rides in November. So the uptake is relatively good on this particular route, especially considering that it's not servicing its intended catchment area. The next slide, as you see there, where I've circled Pine Glen. Once Pine Glen's opened east-west out to Bronte Road, it's our intention to move that route across Dundas, south on Postmaster, and then back west on Pine Glen to Bronte, providing those residents with peak service to the Bronte GO station as well. So I would expect ridership on this route has nowhere to go but up. So that's stuck. There we go. No? Yeah, there we go. All right, so that's it for the route assessments. In total, we're looking at annual savings of about almost $160,000 as a result of these efficiencies. But I think more importantly, what we're looking at, I think efficiencies is the key word. We've, I think, come up with a model that will allow us to continue to serve the residents and the businesses that we are serving now, but to serve them in a more efficient manner. I would expect, as a matter of fact, that ridership as a result of these proposed changes would in fact increase. So, moving from route reviews to transit fares, one of the other question was opportunities to increase fees or revenues. As you know, we increased transit fares in 2012 when we increased the cash fare from $3 to $3.25. So the only remaining means of generating revenue is through further fare increase. To assess what we might be able to achieve in this regard, we looked at again the other fares in the GTA, and in particular we averaged them out. What we found that there were some lower, there were some higher, but in particular the two biggest opportunities existed in the adult monthly pass and the student monthly pass. The adult pass, you'll see, is priced at $94, which is about $5, but sorry, about $7 less than the average for the GTA. And then the student pass in particular is $20 a month less than the average for the GTA. and is the least expensive student pass in the GTA. So if there was, we were looking for additional revenue from fares, those would be the areas that we would look at. I would also suggest, though, that if we're looking at some type of an increase based on averages, that we have in some cases fares that are above the average, and so adjusting to the average, we would see some go up, we would see some go down. The net effect would be about $213,000. That would be net of the lost revenue from lost ridership, which would be in the area of about $90,000. We're not recommending this. We're simply identifying it as something that is available to you should you wish to generate additional revenue from transit ridership. These changes are very substantial and would likely result in significant backlash, and that backlash would manifest itself in the form of lost ridership. We would recommend annual incremental adjustments in order to address these types of gaps. And that's it for the transit portion. Thank you.